So I just recorded a video and forgot to hit record before, so I actually didn't record one, but I'm gonna record one now. So I've seen a few people make videos about how to EQ the classical guitar, and this is kind of fascinating to me. So I thought, well, I guess I'll also make a video about my approach to EQing the classical guitar. So just in case you're thinking, well, I don't know if I have the technical know-how to EQ a guitar recording, or I don't know if I have all the gear. Just trust me, I'm pretty sure that you'll be able to catch on to my approach pretty quickly, okay? And this is just my opinion, but this is the approach that I always take, and I think it's the best approach for recording the classical guitar, maybe any classical instrument. So this is my approach, okay? Take your hands, rub them together a little bit, maybe do a few of these, and then don't EQ classical guitar. I'm serious though, I don't believe in EQing a classical guitar even when you're making a recording. What I say is basically going to be based on two different reasons, okay? The first reason is, if you're really interested in EQing things, I don't think recording classical instruments is the most advantageous style. So, what do I mean by that? Well, I'm a classical guitarist, okay? A lot of people online don't know that about me. When I play, I incorporate elements of flamenco. I incorporate elements of rock and roll. I incorporate elements of heavy metal, okay? But I know who I am, and at the end of the day, I'm a classical guitarist. If I were a flamenco guitarist, I would change my whole technique. I would probably play a different guitar, or at least the guitar I play would be set up very differently. I would change the way I hold the guitar. Everything would be different. Same thing if I were a rock and roll guitarist. I would play an electric guitar. I would play with a pick. Okay, I would choose my amps, things like that. Okay, because I know who I am. That's my end goal, to be the type of musician that I think I can be my fullest artistic self with, okay? So I want to take full advantages of that fact. And I want to figure out who I am so that I can figure out what advantages I want to try and go for. And sure, incorporate a little bit of this and a little bit of that, but know that this is really what I'm after, and I'm not going to try and do something that's not advantageous for what I want to accomplish. Okay, so how does this apply for EQing? Well, classical instruments are live instruments. They are, traditionally and even today, they're meant to be played live. Even in a recording, it sounds like someone playing live. That's why people go to concert halls to record and things like that. So if you are really into EQing, I think that's great. I just don't think there's a lot of advantages when you try and EQ classically recorded instruments. If you were to record basically any type of electronic music, you need to EQ the heck out of that by definition. You can record a bunch of tracks and stack 10 keyboard parts or 10 synthesizer parts or 10 guitar parts on top of each other and tweak them and add effects and EQ the heck out of all of them and get this monstrous sound that you would never get otherwise. That is certainly an art form, and one that I really respect, because people hire music producers for a reason. They know how to do these things. They know how to do them very well, and just at the drop of a hat. But that style of music, that venue for it, it just lends itself to have so much more advantage in terms of things like EQ than something like the classical style, where I just don't think that's really the goal. The goal is to capture the lightning in the bottle kind of effect, even for a recording, even if people record it in different takes and piece them together. It's meant to sound like one person sitting down and playing an instrument. So if you're really into EQing, I think that's fantastic. I just think your goals and your skills and your desires would be better placed and would have more advantages in a style of music that requires a lot of EQing and a lot of editing after the recording is made. The second point is, if you are a classical guitarist, and you feel the need to EQ your sound after you've recorded it, then you're just not as into sound production as you could be. Now, let me explain what I mean. And I don't think there's anything wrong with this approach. I just think that it's factual. By definition, you could be more into the physical act of producing sound on the classical guitar, okay? So, the classical guitar is one of the most sensitive instruments ever made. And especially at this point in its development, where builders have tried a bunch of different things and have found, many different builds that work extremely well and are extremely sensitive, okay? So if you're into sound production and you're really into it, then here's kind of how that works. When you warm up, your main goal is sound production. When you do technical work, your main goal is sound production. When you play your repertoire, your main goal is sound production. When you learn new music, your main goal is sound production. When you make an arrangement, your main goal there is sound production. When you write a piece, your main goal is sound production. When you listen to someone play, the number one thing you're listening to is their sound production. Okay? Are you with me yet? It's the umbrella on which underneath which everything else lies. Okay? And then this creates a journey that you go on, because I don't see an end to it. And I know people that have been studying this for decades, and they just seem to be as into sound production as they ever have, which tells me, there doesn't really seem to be a definite end to this. The classical guitar is really that sensitive, and it's really that amazing of an instrument. So you spend years and years studying, improving, developing sound production. Not only that, so does the guitar that you play. You don't just work to make a loud sound or a clear sound or a bright sound or warm sound. You work so that your guitar produces certain kinds of overtones. You experiment and encourage it and beat it up in certain ways so that you get this sound cloud effect. You get all these thick overtones that are happening underneath your clear melody notes and the literal notes that you're playing. But behind that, you get this wonderful sound cloud of just harmonic support. And listen for this when you listen to classical guitarists. It's a wonderful thing. And your guitar, just like you, it learns how to do this better. And it tells you what it likes. So you pay attention to your guitar. When it's like, hey, I really like that, you're like, oh, okay, I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna do that a lot. I'm definitely gonna find a place for it. And you try and get it to try things, and sometimes it will develop in ways that you want it to, okay? And that's the kind of relationship you have with your instrument. So imagine doing this for years. Sound production is the whole umbrella under which everything else you do exists. Then you go to make a recording, and the representation of your sound basically comes from your whole existence as a musician. Because if it is really important to you, it's the number one thing that you've been striving to do, no matter what you're playing, no matter what kind of work you're doing, okay? So your sound production, your tone quality is best represented by how you're gonna play today, right now. So you record, okay? Why on earth would you then change that after the fact? Why would you take out any frequency that you have worked your whole musical life by definition to produce? And someone might make the argument, well, you would add frequencies. Well, maybe. That's artificial. It's not natural. I don't think it's very conducive to this type of approach. I would do another musical style if that was my main goal. But you could do that. But why would you alter that when the entire existence of your musical being is that sound production? And my answer to that question is there's no way in hell I would alter it. Absolutely not. Now, you know, when you make a recording, you're going to notice that it doesn't sound the way that it sounds when you play. You're behind the guitar and you're kind of above it, right? So you're going to get kind of a different perspective of the sound. This doesn't mean you just have to accept a bad recording or that there's not things that you can do. You can do a lot of things. But all these things are centered around, you know, trying to catch the lightning in the bottle and trying to capture the sound of who you are and what you're doing on that day, the musical representation of what you've been doing your whole musical life, okay? All of your work, all of your study. So what can you do? Well, you can do things like try different mics. Mics don't record what you hear. Mics record what they think they hear and what they're designed to think that they hear, okay? So you can go online and look at the most expensive microphones and the ones that are most popular and buy those. But it doesn't mean that you're gonna get the results that you want, and it doesn't mean that you will get the sound that you're going for. The mic that I use is very inexpensive, but I settled on it because it's the most naturally sounding mic that I have found. And I have used, you know, mics that are much more expensive. I didn't own them, but I recorded with people who did, and they didn't sound as good as my mic. And for some people, you know, they may have sounded better, but not for my recording goals, okay? Because I have very specific recording goals when I make a recording. I want my recording to sound like, you know, you came over to my house and we're hanging out, we're having a good time, and then all of a sudden you say, "Hey Chuck, you playing anything new? You know, I'd love to hear it." And I say, "Oh yeah, sure, thanks for asking." And I pull up my guitar and I play a song for you, okay? We're sitting in a small to medium-sized room. You're about 5 to 6 feet away. That's what I want the recording to sound like. I don't want it to sound like I'm playing in a big cathedral. I don't want it to sound like I'm playing in a huge giant concert hall, just for my own reasons. So I want the mic that sounds the most, you know, what I call natural. And that just means it sounds the most like you're sitting 5 to 6 feet in front of me and you can hear all the things one would hear in that position, okay? So you can try out different mics and see if they help you meet your sound recording goals. And then another thing you can do is move your mic around, right? You could look up online what the recommendations are. I wouldn't waste my time. I would just start experimenting, because chances are you're gonna find something that works better for your goals than what someone has prescribed helps them achieve their goals. So if you wanna, you know, try and find a shortcut, you can look up formulas, but I think you might as well just get out there, do some mic tests and see kind of what the results are, because the sound does change a whole lot when you even move the mic just a tiny little bit. So you can experiment with moving the mic around once you find a mic where you think, you know, I think this gives me a good idea of the sound that I want. Now start experimenting with distance, you know, placement. If you want to use more than one mic, yeah, sure. I mean, try all that stuff out if you're interested. But those are all things to help capture the best version of what's going to be recorded of your identity, your sound as a musician. And when you're making your sounds as specifically and as well as you can, and you have the placement of your gear to capture things in just the way you want, why on earth would you mess with it after that? And I believe the answer is you wouldn't. So don't mess with it. So thanks for checking out this video, and I'd love to hear your point of view, especially if you disagree or if you do something totally different. I'd love to hear what your process is and how it helps you achieve your musical goals. If you want to learn, participate, and support, then come join us over at the A Guitar community.